Hey everybody, in this week's episode we are talking about Nightmare Alley, but before we do that we are going to be talking about Jackass Forever and the Book of Boba Fett, Season 1. So, get ready.
Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me as always, you'll have to excuse him, he's just bitten off a head of a chicken. Mike, how you doing?
I've been better. You know, I prefer my chickens cooked, but you know, when you need your opium booze, you need your opium booze.
Yeah.
Do what you gotta do.
Yeah. Well, I hear the blood is good for you. So, also with us is a man who's promised to do a tarot reading after the show for me. Justin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, but you won't be according to the cards.
Oh, no.
Oh gosh.
I'll tell you more later.
Okay.
You've opened a can of worms now, Chris.
This is going to be a fun show.
If this is your first time listening, normally we like to start off every episode without any dark magic in a section called News on the March, where we talk about film and TV news, or more generally and realistically, just the movies and TV that we have been watching since last time we recorded. Then we move into our feature review. This week, like I said at the top of the show, we are discussing Nightmare Alley.
That's right. And also here on the Casual Cinecast, every other week, or just about every other week, we put out a Casually Criterion episode. In these episodes, listeners choose a film from the Criterion Collection for us to review by voting in a poll that we put out on our Twitter account. So go ahead and check out our next Criterion poll over on Twitter, and also go check out our latest episode, which is on One Night in Miami, and also a ton of other Criterion Collection reviews in our back catalog.
That's right. And sidebar, just a real sidebar real quick. This is not the Criterion version of Nightmare Alley that we are reviewing today.
That's
Even
a
though,
good distinction.
yeah, we do have a lot of Criterion content. I want to see the Criterion version, and I know Chris has.
It's real good.
But this is not the version we are discussing today.
Sad, I guess.
Yeah.
But we could have paired them together. Maybe we should have thought this through more.
I know. Missed opportunity.
Yeah. I have instant regret.
Yeah. Well, that's a little bit of behind the scenes for everyone. This is how organized we are.
Yeah, if you want to tell us how to do our jobs better, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. Send us messages on any of those accounts. Vote in our poll, like I said before, on our Twitter account. That's the best place to follow us. You can also message us or email us at casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And then, of course, if you haven't done so already, you like the show, you want to help other people find it, go onto your podcast platform, give us a 5-star review, and let other people know that we're a show worth checking out.
Please and thank you. And with that, I say we move into News on the March.
Yes.
News on the March!
All right, Justin. I believe you and I watched a movie. We have a movie in common this week.
Yep. So it seems.
It does. And that movie is Jackass Forever. Now, Justin, you are personally the biggest Jackass fan that I think I know of.
Yeah. If you know of a bigger one or think you do, let me know their name and number and contact information.
So you can go on a friend date.
Well, no, I mean, I was thinking I would like intimidate them and try to prove my bigger fandom of Jackass.
There you go.
And confront them. Tell them to step down.
Yeah. Relinquish the title. Anyways, so Justin, what did you think about Jackass Forever? Did it live up to the hype? I think it goes without saying that you are a fan of all the movies and TV show previously. So yeah, was this worth a trip to the theater? Did you laugh? Did it hold up? Did you miss Bam Margera and Ryan Dunn in this? Did you feel their presence, their absence? I guess I should say.
Yeah. I think yes to all of those questions that you asked. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad I went to the theater to see it. It was definitely worth it. I had a great time. I laughed. My wife went with me. She's not as big of a fan as I am, but she does enjoy the movies as long as it's not the parts that involve excrement and bodily fluids.
Ah, wow. Sounds like she might have had a hard time in some places.
Which is a decent amount of it, but she loves the rest so much that she gets through those parts, you know?
Sure.
So she enjoyed it. She had a great time. I think did it live up to the hype? I mean, yes, but I think it's going to be pretty difficult for a Jackass film to disappoint just by the nature of what it is, unless it's just something wildly different and unexpected, right?
Sure.
At least that's how I feel about it. And I think some of the major characters who are gone and not in this one for, one reason or another, I think they're missed just because so much of what works about this film and the franchise in general, as we've just discussed before, at least you and I have, Mike. I don't know if it's been on the podcast, but the friendship and the laughter and the nostalgia of having like grown up with these people is what is some of the best parts about all these movies and revisiting them over the years. And to have two pretty important pieces of that gone, as well as the people who come along with Bam and Ryan Dunn, right?
Yeah.
So I missed them. Yeah. The new cast members they add, I enjoyed them for the most part. I don't have a complaint about any of them. I thought they did what they needed to do. They fit in pretty well. But there's a good sized gap that they can't fill.
Sure. Yeah.
What do you think?
They do have a nice tribute to Ryan Dunn at the end of the film, though, which I really enjoyed. It was sweet.
Yeah, the post credits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm right there with you, I think. This, I actually left the theater enjoying, I haven't seen any of the Jackasses in many years. In fact, I've only seen Jackass 3D once in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that I did leave the theater in this one enjoying it more than Jackass 3D.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah. I think Jackass number 2 is always going to be the gold standard for this type of movie, in my opinion. But yeah, this is a good time. This is a good time at the movies. You get to see old friends, or, if you've been following the Jackass crew for a while, they will feel like old friends because, like you said, part of the appeal for this whole thing is the friendship, the camaraderie, the hanging out with your friends element of it.
Yeah.
They're very like a welcoming crew. They seem fun, Some of them are getting pretty old.
Yeah.
And it's getting more and more painful to watch them get hurt. Because I'm like, oof, that's like arthritis. That's
I felt worse for them this time. Like, it was pretty easy to laugh at the new, younger crew. And then when some of the original members would have to do stuff, like, I think I found myself maybe laughing less like at them or whatever, and just being like, oh my gosh, like, haven't they been through enough? Like,
yeah, there's a skit with a bear in this one where I didn't laugh at all. I was just stressed.
Yeah, I know. Like, is this funny or is this just mean? And
yeah,
I don't know. There's several of those like pranks. They kind of upped the pranks in this one, and a lot of times they tended to fall on the same character or two, and I started to feel really bad for them by the end of the movie.
Yeah, let's just put it this way: they put the new blood through a lot of crap in this movie.
Yeah. I think some of the pranks though are like the best parts of the movie. Like the ending bit, I think, which starts as like a stunt and then turns into a bit of a prank, I think was probably one of my favorite things that happened in the movie.
Yeah. I will say though, if I'm being critical of anything, the intro for this one, I think is the weakest intro.
Yeah, I would agree. And I guess correlation to the Criterion Collection. It's like a sort of a spin on Godzilla. So
yeah, kaiju.
Yeah. So that's why we can talk about Jackass on this podcast.
There you go. This highbrow podcast of ours.
Yeah.
I think
I agree.
It's funny. Like, to say anything about it would kind of give it away. But usually the opening stunts, when they're really good, it's like all of them together in one location or a nearby location, and it's a chain reaction of events. where they all each start getting hurt. And that's kind of what they do with this one, but it's more of like a skit with just like random stunts thrown in.
Yeah. And it feels like, I think you can feel versus the like, here we are all in a space and a bunch of chaos is happening, and let's see everybody's individual moment of chaos and getting hurt or whatever. Whereas this is like, here's a stage shot and a setup where something bad happens to somebody, and then here's the next one, and it's not like it lacks the chaos, I think. And
like for example, the first Jackass, they're all in a gigantic shopping cart and they all fly out at the same time. What's the beginning of 2 again?
2 is the bulls running down the street, and they're all running.
Yeah, and it's all together. It's all kind of one seemingly on one ongoing event. And then in the third one, they're like in a room with like floods and a bunch of explosions happen, right?
Yeah, and I think I might be getting it mixed up, but I think like a bunch of dildos fly and they get shot at them and stuff and hit them.
It was 3D at the time, after all.
Yeah. That movie is like 20% dildos flying in 3D.
Yeah. I need to go back and see the third Jackass again, because like I said, I haven't seen it since theaters. But overall, I would say Jackass Forever, if you're a fan of the franchise, it's fun. If you never have traditionally been a fan of the franchise before, I would say check out the Rotten Tomatoes and the even the top tier, like prestigious critics. See what they're saying about this, because it's just fun. It's just good fun. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. It's good-natured fun.
Yeah, and
it's gross, but it's fun.
Yeah, and I think there's something leaving the theater. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but like, I guess I was before, and I'm not sure how common knowledge it is, but knowing that there's a certain stunt that happens in the film that like is likely Johnny Knoxville's like last biggest stunt, like most dangerous stunt that he does, and that's not a spoiler because it's something he said outside of the film, right? So worth checking out for that.
Also, I wonder what the timeline was for filming this, because Johnny Knoxville has embraced his white hair. He's gone James Gunn and embraced the white hair. But most of this movie, he doesn't have white hair. So it was really bizarre, because like there'd be like one skit where Johnny Knoxville has white hair and then another skit where he doesn't.
Were they wearing masks the whole time?
No, not really.
Because I know they're wearing masks sometimes, right?
I mean, you see like some of the extra cameramen wearing masks. Like that one dude who's always throwing up.
Right.
Like, they gross him out like 2 or 3 times, and he's got a mask on, so you could tell he's like gagging, but you don't know if anything's coming out because he's got a mask on his face.
Yeah, and then some of like the extras when they do like, you know, the public prank stuff, like you see people in masks.
Yeah. So.
But they're not wearing them for the most part. Yeah, and Mike, I don't know if it sounds like, you know, you maybe didn't like 3 as much, but I will say that the 3.5, that little like documentaries that they kind of put out with deleted scenes and stuff, is pretty worthwhile for 3, especially when at the time they felt like this is the last one, you know?
They threw everything at it.
Yeah. So anyways, we won't have to dive into that.
Cool. Well, I'll probably check it out. You know, it's reminded. I kind of want more of this. I kind of miss it. Yeah. But I will say that this is probably best seen, if not in a theater, at least with friends that enjoy it.
Yeah. Sure. Absolutely. And my theater was kind of empty, which is maybe a little disappointing. But
bummer.
Yeah.
I had people with me, and then we were in a crowded theater, so it was a pretty good time.
Yeah. There's enough people, but definitely the other people laughing was good, you know. It was communal.
Yeah. Well, like, what was so great about the theater is like whenever a stunt was starting to get set up, you would hear like someone in the audience be like, "Oh no."
Yeah, that's like the best moment a lot of times about the stunts. Sometimes like they happen and they go off and they're like, well, that wasn't maybe what was expected or like as crazy as I thought, but like it's the buildup, and you're like as soon as you realize what's going to happen, and how bad it could be, and you just have that moment of like, oh
no. That was me every time they pull out a snake in these fucking movies. I can't do it. I hate it.
Yeah, the biggest one, and I'll be vague, but like the skateboard guillotine.
Oh,
thing.
Yeah.
Whenever I realized what that was designed to do, I was like, oh, Oh my God.
Yeah.
No way. So this film, for if nothing else, gives you like, it gets a reaction out of you.
I like the, I'll be vague. This is the last thing I want to say before we move on to Boba Fett, but Scorpion Botox.
Oh my God. Yeah. That was funny. That the female cast member is such a trooper.
I know.
Like,
I wish they would bring more girls into the fold, because I think it adds like a nice change of pace to all the wieners and
yeah.
and horsing around that goes on between the dudes.
Yeah. And not in the sense that she's showing off her vagina or boobs. They don't go there with her. Clarity.
It's all nice, but
I think the thing that I felt most with her is like, I wish that she was a little bit more part of the gang already, because I felt her, rather than like cutting up, was trying to prove herself and like do everything as tough as possible at times. Yeah. Which was like less funny to me, than like when the other people kind of like lean into the pain of it and like showing that off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard that's probably thinking too hard about Jackass.
I actually heard her described as like, because Jackass kind of predates YouTube and all the crazy stuff that goes on YouTube. So like, but now everybody is used to like, well, got to put out that content. Everybody has their own YouTube channel. So she's just like not scared of it because she's been doing it, for so long. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but.
Yeah, I'd never seen her before, but she was a welcome addition to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked her. This was great.
Yeah. Anyways, lots of fun cameos, fun stunts.
Mm-hmm.
Recommend.
Yes.
Okay, so next on the docket, before we move into the main review, Book of Boba Fett is now officially done with its first season. Maybe its only season, we don't really know. Does it matter? These shows all appear to be one story. I don't understand how this works anymore with Star Wars.
Yeah, that's the big story with it, I think, since we last talked about it, which was maybe right after the first episode came out, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, but since then, this show has been through like a whirlwind of public reaction, and I think people realizing what it is and what Star Wars TV is going to be, and that's been a journey.
Yeah, it has. And as someone who has watched, I think, all of the Star Wars TV now that exists, except for like Lego specials and like little cartoons that are like 5 minutes long or whatever that are on Disney Plus, but I've seen all the series. What?
You're almost a true fan.
Yeah, almost. I still need to see like Forces of Destiny and the Lego stuff, which I don't need to. I probably won't. But anyways, as someone who's seen the Clone Wars, this didn't shock me as much as it seemed to shock everyone else. This, let's leave our main character in the middle of the season to go do something else for 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Like, that is pretty par the course for something like Clone Wars or sometimes Rebels, not so much. But yeah, this is the first the second live action Star Wars TV show. And it very much seems to just be like, I think it would be less confusing if they had been like the Book of Boba Fett, like part of the Mandalorian subtitle.
Yeah.
I don't
Titling
know.
And expectations is a thing that needs to be managed, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I will say that back when the show was announced, Kathleen Kennedy did go on stage and she did blatantly say the next chapter of The Mandalorian will be coming out next December with Book of Boba Fett.
Sure. And they
however, that was not marketed that way.
Right. And every time they would talk about it, or like Ming-Na Wen would talk about it like she called it Mandalorian 2.5. So
yeah, that's what they basically have been calling it behind the scenes for a while now. And now I think everyone knows what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to get into like personal opinion about like the season overall, I think the issue, or maybe not the issue, but the reason that reactions were so strong whenever we do leave Boba Fett for a couple of episodes is that, at least in my opinion, and from the opinion of several people that I talked to who are fans of Star Wars and whatnot, that like the response to the first few episodes was pretty underwhelmed for the most part, and there were issues that people had, and were just like, there was a little bit of disappointment in the show for varying reasons. So whenever it does switch gears to something else that people like a lot more, I think it just like lended itself to people being upset because it's like, oh, like the show that you've titled the show is not very good, and the best two things to happen have been not even involving the title character. You know what I mean? So like, it's almost, I don't know if the first few episodes had been like unequivocally good or great in most people's opinions, if that reaction would have been as strong to leaving.
Well, I think that's definitely true of episode 3. I remember the reaction to episode 2 being generally pretty positive.
Yeah, 2 is my favorite, like, Boba episode. I really like that. Yeah. 3 and 4, though, I didn't like as much.
Yeah. See, I remember it being an upturn in opinion more so than it being like a great episode. It was like, well, that was better, but at least that's how I felt, and the conversation I had felt like that was better than 1, but.
Yeah,
I guess we went back down.
I guess I experienced it a little differently. Like I watched it with my brother, and I guess we're just spoilers for Book of Boba Fett generally, kind of.
Yeah.
But episode 2 ends with like a dance around the campfire, and granted, my brother binged the first 2. Like he waited every 2 weeks and then would binge them with me, which I think is a smarter way to do it, to be honest with you, with this particular show.
Sure.
But when episode 2 ended and they were dancing around the campfire with the Tuskens and like that ceremonial dance, he literally leaned forward and said, "This is awesome."
Okay.
So, like, he really liked episode 2. Like, I think it's probably still his favorite of the whole season. So, nice. I don't know. I mean, that's what I saw online. But you are right in the sense that the reactions were very mixed for the first, like, 3 or 4 episodes. I think episode 4 was generally, like, a step in the right direction. But then in episode 5, we take off with a different character.
Yeah.
And although there's a lot, thematically, you could argue that the stories tie in together, it basically just feels like 2 Mando episodes shoved into the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Even though, they all tie together at the end. But I guess this is what we're going to be dealing with now, going forward with Star Wars, right? Is this idea that it's all being treated as one story? I don't really know. It's gonna be strange, especially with like Mando season 3 coming, and then Ahsoka, possibly Boba Fett season 2.
Yeah. I think I would say that there's a better way to do this. Yeah. And I don't know what it is, but it was weird.
Well, I think pacing is the issue more than anything. Like, so in my eyes, like I go back and I look at all the things that happened. I'm like, yeah, they filled out Boba's backstory really well, in my opinion, with the Tuskens, all the way up till we got his ship. The problem is we're doing 2 different timelines in episodes that vary between 35 minutes and 45 minutes.
Sure.
So like the pacing just feels so slow in like the present day story for like more than half the season.
Yeah. And I think, so just like my thoughts overall on the season, is pretty uneven, and I think, but like, what kind of encapsulates it is like episode 2. This is the thing I always go back to when I'm thinking about this, is episode 2, you have like about like maybe 10 to 15 minutes in the present timeline before we flash back to the Tuskens, which I really love the Tusken stuff. And the reason I like episode 2 so much was the promise, or what I felt they were making a promise, like, because we got the Hutts and we got like Chrysanthemum, and so like, and then there was even a promise of the Tuskens, and then episode 3 really felt like they're like, oh, well, we weren't making that promise. And maybe they weren't, and I misunderstood what they were saying. But like the things I was so excited about in episode 2 were all of a sudden gone in episode 3, which I felt like if they had of like grown those things, the Boba story could have been a lot better. Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of my feeling about that.
To me, it's like the whole season is him acquiring allies, right? So I guess to me, there's an episode missing between episode 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Or like there's more, like all the flashback stuff, I think there's plenty of screen time dedicated to it. from Boba getting out of the Sarlacc pit all the way to finding his ship. Like, I wouldn't really change a whole lot about that. But where I think most of the dissatisfaction on my end comes from is like, in episode 3, we hire these mod kids. We get one scene of them talking where they get hired, and then no other scenes after that where we get to know them in any kind of way, shape, or form. Like, we have an action scene that wasn't very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're gone for like 3 episodes, and then they show up in the finale, and we get a little bit more of them. But it's like, we got a lot of Chrysanthemum, the Wookiee. You know, we know who Din Djarin is, the Mando.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we know who Fennec Shand is. But like, these other people on Boba's team, we have no real connection to. We haven't gone on an adventure with them. We don't know their names until the last episode.
I don't even know their names now.
Well, we know 2 of their names, and I've kind of forgotten. I know the girl's name is Drash.
Oh, yeah.
Because they say it like 3 times.
It was kind of pointed out, like, there's a Ringerverse podcast that were talking about this, and they said that it's very possible that there's a scene missing, or it felt like there's a scene missing in the last episode.
I feel like there's scenes that didn't get filmed.
Yeah, well, like Fennec Shand says to the mod kids, like, "Oh, manners, I like it." Well, that seems like a setup. Seems like a punchline, and there's no setup. You know, like, was there like a point where they didn't have manners? You know, or and I think that makes sense. I wonder, and maybe Mike, you know more about this stuff, but it feels like maybe something went wrong as they were shooting Boba Fett, you know, or
I don't think it's that. So Robert Rodriguez has talked about it, where they went and filmed the finale first before anything.
Okay.
Because it was the most complicated.
Sure.
And they were expecting to get shut down any day.
Oh, okay.
And so Robert Rodriguez is notorious for filming things very quickly. He keeps everything in his brain. He edits, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
For better or worse, that's what he does. That's his style.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking, and he was saying that, like, by the time he talked to John and Dave, who run Mando and are, you know, write and all that stuff, they were apparently shocked at how much Robert Rodriguez had already filmed. And the attitude was basically, we don't know when we're going to get shut down. Go, move, go.
Okay.
And so it was apparently a very fast-paced shoot. And apparently they never got shut down, but there were times where they thought they were going to.
Okay.
And so the marching orders were, go fast, we don't know how long this will last until we get shut down.
And I guess I can understand that that's kind of the same thing where, like, they were just going fast, and it does feel like they didn't take time to think about things in some instances, you know, like in some of the action sequences, yeah, and even in some of the writing, it doesn't seem like, especially
to me,
the Boba
that's where
Fett
the
stuff.
biggest flaw is. A lot of people are shitting on Rodriguez, and I won't defend him because I haven't really been a fan of his movies
for a while.
in a
yeah.
while. I was when I was younger.
Sure.
But what I will say is, I think most of the problems come from the pacing and the writing aspect. This idea of juggling a flashback and a present-day story without giving each story the full amount of... Like, these episodes don't have to be 35 minutes. You can give us 5 more minutes of scenes.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, there's no thing that says, like, well, we can't... Like, there just needed to be more in, like, to explain things out in the future present line, because it's messy. It's like, shows up, let's go to the mayor. Oh, I got assassinated, or I got an assassination attempt. Let's go back to the Bacta tank. Flashbacks. Wake up the next episode. A little bit in the present day. Back to the Bacta tank. So I see what they were doing, and then in episode 4, it's like, you're completely healed. No more Bacta tank for you. And then the flashbacks stop. But that's really frustrating whenever you get one 35-minute episode and then you got to wait a week for the next one.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
Yeah. Justin, what did you think overall? You kind of gave an intro or whatever, but what did you think overall?
I mean, overall, I think, like, all said and done, it was something that I enjoyed. And I think once I adjusted to the fact that this is more like Star Wars, the live action TV show, than a Boba Fett series, I think I'm happy for everything that we got, because I did enjoy the finale. I thought the finale was, like, a lot of fun. You know, I think, could we have had more filled out and maybe cared about some of the characters more? Sure. You know, but in terms of just a big climactic, like, action-packed finale, it was a lot of fun, and it was a lot, like, I was pretty satisfied. But I think that it was a slog at times in some of the first like 4 episodes. And I think, I don't remember if it was episode 3 or episode 4 where I was like, I think they might have just missed the mark. I think this might be a bad show.
Probably 3. That's the common consensus.
Yeah, maybe.
Which one?
It probably was.
Which one was the one with the mod race? Or like
3.
Is that 3?
That's
Okay.
3.
Yeah.
Because 4 is where he meets up with Fennec Shand, and that's finally where we actually get like what I think could have been used in episode 1, which is where Boba Fett actually talks about what he wants to achieve and why.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Which
And like I honestly feel like if that had been in the first episode, somewhere, people would have been like more on board. Because my frustration was like for the first 3 episodes, it's like, what does Boba Fett want to do? Why does he want to be a crime lord?
Yeah.
He has that statement in there though, and it's real hard to divorce it. He says something like, "I'm tired of getting killed for the people in power. They're
Yeah.
the ones making the decision. I want to make the decisions."
Like, I'm smarter than them. They're gonna get me killed.
Yeah. But I don't know that Boba Fett is smarter than them. Because towards the end of this, there's a lot of dumb, I enjoyed the last episode. I think that it's uneven. There are parts of it that are weird, and I think like aren't written very well. Like where we don't care about certain characters, or you have to have watched Clone Wars in order to care about certain characters.
I would argue that this show does not stand. I don't think you have to watch Clone Wars to care, but I think you definitely have to watch The Mandalorian to care.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think there's one character that I don't even think they say his name, but he comes from the Clone Wars. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but did he have they don't really? He has like a backstory with Boba Fett, and none of that's explained in this.
Well, most of the backstory with Boba Fett is actually like there's a little bit in the Clone Wars that still is there, but a lot of those are from unreleased story reels that we just know happened. So they never actually officially aired.
That's why this show's so weird.
Well, okay, so let me ask you this: as 2 guys who didn't watch the Clone Wars, did the Cad Bane stuff fall
I watched
flat
Clone
for you?
Wars.
Oh, you did? Okay. Well, Justin, you're in the process. You haven't really watched very much of it, right?
Yeah, I haven't encountered Cad Bane in Clone Wars yet, but I did watch The Bad Batch, and he shows up in that.
Yeah.
So
let me ask
I was
you this.
familiar with him from that.
Sure, but let me ask you this. Okay, so the finale with Boba Fett, where he's talking, he's like, "I'm not a little boy anymore, and you're an old man," and all that stuff. And did any of that work for you at all? Or because like for me, the way I read it, and granted I know the backstory, but to me that all worked to actually further Boba's character and make me feel an actual arc took place.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind this, like if I don't know everything and we get these idea that these characters have a past, like I don't mind that. Like maybe it has more weight if I know everything, but him showing up and understanding that they have a past, like I don't mind, especially with Star Wars, because for a decent chunk of my early childhood, I just had the original films. So
And they reference stuff like you're supposed to know it, but didn't exist, like the
so
Clone Wars.
that's fine. And I love filling out that backstory in my head. I loved filling out, making the Kessel Run in under 6 parsecs or 12 parsecs or whatever the quote is,
True
right?
enough.
Like, what's that?
I said true enough.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my thought.
I think Favreau's dialogue he always approaches all of these from like a very Western standpoint, where like less is
Especially
more,
that, yeah.
tip of the iceberg storytelling,
Yeah.
I did like his first appearance in the penultimate episode with.
Okay, so you didn't like his appearance at all in the second episode, is what you're saying, right?
Well, it's not that I didn't like it.
You didn't find the dialogue that Favreau gave you wasn't enough to really.
Well, and part of
There's
it's
that gap for you.
What do other people like? If you're only watching Boba Fett or Mandalorian, but you've never watched Clone Wars, does his appearance mean anything to you? So I'm really coming at this with like,
Well, I only have one other person I watched it with as an example, and that was my brother. And whenever he showed up on screen, my brother was really excited, and he said,
Sure,
"That guy's
yeah.
really cool. I'm jealous that I don't have that like feeling you get of having like seen him in the cartoons and then seeing him come to live action."
Yeah.
Like he was saying, like, I'm jealous that you get that feeling.
You get so excited about it, yeah.
Yeah. Now, that said, he really, really liked the character, and it worked for him, so much so that what happens at the end disappointed him.
Sure, yeah. I could see that. But
so
he can't really be.
Yeah, well, they did their homework, and they left a little red light blinking.
Yeah.
And I have one more thought before I'm done, but if that's okay with you guys, and I want to know your thoughts too.
Sure.
Regarding the same thing. So in regards to the sort of like less is more dialogue, I think where this show for me fell short is in a similar way that Solo fell short for me, in that like I don't think this series to me worked as a Boba Fett like enhancer, or was enhanced by it being Boba Fett. Like for me, Boba Fett was always a less is more character, and to get more fleshed out a character and ultimately made more seem less to me, if that makes sense. And I think that what they did like didn't make him any more of an interesting character to me. Like I think Boba Fett was better left alone, and I can see why that would like disappoint some people, right? Because Boba Fett carries a lot of baggage, and I just, part of me wishes that like it didn't have the baggage of Boba Fett. But what do y'all think?
Well, I guess what I would say is you would be right if the prequels didn't exist. Like, I would agree with you. Not that you're right or wrong. But, like, I would agree with you more if I hadn't seen the prequels and George didn't already ruin the less is more with Boba Fett. I won't say ruin, but he changed Boba Fett, gave him a face, gave him a voice, gave him a backstory. And then,
and millions
if you're
of
looking at the
brothers.
story as a whole, that makes his original trilogy appearance somewhat disappointing, because then Boba Fett's just not cool at all. He's got no personality. He grows up to be like a goofus who flies himself into a Sarlacc pit. So it's like, to me, this show only improved upon a character that was a complete missed opportunity in Return of the Jedi. And then he tried to go back and do that a little bit in the prequels, and in doing so, made me, in retrospect, be like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, he's cool in the prequels, but he's one of the coolest parts of the prequels, I should say. But then in the original trilogy, he's just sort of a schmuck who dies in a very unceremonious comic relief type way. So to me, bringing Boba Fett out of the Sarlacc pit, really leaning into the fact that he's a clone who doesn't belong with clones, doesn't have a family, and was raised to be like a killer, but doesn't really want to anymore. Like, to me, that's giving him something there for me to latch onto. Whereas before it was like, yeah, that prequel setup was pretty cool, but too bad I know it doesn't go anywhere interesting.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it.
So I guess to answer your question, I didn't think he was cool before. And the less is more attitude with Boba Fett never impressed me. He was never one of my original trilogy guys, you know? I didn't have the action figure. I wasn't wondering about him. I always thought he was kind of a loser.
And that's the interesting thing about Star Wars in general, and very rarely is there any like franchise that you can really talk about this with. But like anytime you touch something from Star Wars, especially like the original trilogy, and you start messing with it, you know, like you know, you hear millions of fans outcry, you know, like, well, that's not how I expected it. You know, that's not what you're almost safer. And honestly, I kind of wish they would. Well, my dream is to move away from like the Skywalker stuff, like build something, you know, like off to the side of Skywalker. Who knows? Like,
they are working on that.
Yeah.
They are fleshing out other time periods right now in book form that they're going to dive into on the live action eventually. But right now, I think what Star Wars fans are either going to have to accept, or Lucasfilm is going to have to just learn the hard way after years and years and years of abuse, is that right now that's what they want to do. They want to flesh out these characters, rip off that Band-Aid, leave your preconceived notions behind, they're going to bridge the gap between the two trilogies to make the sequel trilogy. They want to do the same thing with the sequel trilogy that happened with the prequels with the Clone Wars.
Sure. In retrospect, make the sequel trilogy better.
Right. Like, do the homework that J.J. Abrams didn't do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because like they wanted, this was their plan all along. Keep it vague how we got here, and we'll fill in the gaps later. That's always been their mantra. And right now we're in a weird time where it's like you'll get these over the moon people being like, Luke Skywalker's here. Like, oh my God, this is exactly how I envisioned him. Not like the stupid Last Jedi or whatever. Like, but then equally, like for every diehard geek boy that you satisfy, some highbrow critic is going to be like, well, I don't like this deepfake technology with like the robot voice, you know? And that's fair. Both are fair. But it's going to be a mixed bag. And that's just the way it's going to be, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, real quick, I got two things. The first, to answer your question, Justin, I think Boba Fett just didn't feel developed enough to have much of a character. Like there's some things there. I just feel like they kind of fell short on Boba Fett as a character. And hopefully in future seasons of Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett 2, we'll get more from him. And that may have something to do with like the run and gun. We're going to get shut down at any moment. Let's just shoot, you know? And then the second thing that I always try to remember when I'm watching this stuff, there's a YouTube video that I'm sure you can find it, but it's Siskel and Ebert arguing with some like critic that is saying that Star Wars, the original trilogy, is ruining the cinema, you know, like, and they're like, no, it's fun. You know, Siskel and Ebert, who, you know, for a lot of times can be pretty highfalutin themselves. They're like, no, this is fun stuff. You know, like not everything has to be drive my car, which I also love, but like,
well, Ebert is one of the few critics that I think gave an unabashedly positive review to the Phantom Menace.
Oh, really? Yeah. Phantom Menace is weird. Everybody, I was like, this can't be bad. It has to be good. And so for, you know, a while afterwards, I would trick myself. Anyways, but yeah, so it's fun and take it that way. And if you, I mean,
and also equally, like, they're doing what George said to do, and that's like embrace the children. Like, you have to, like, we don't want it because we're all grown men watching this, but like, it is supposed to be for like 5 to 10-year-olds. That's the sweet spot. That's where you hook them forever, you know?
Right.
And,
there are...
and I think there's a whole generation of kids right now who are only really caring about Luke through these episodes of Mando.
Sure. I had, for Christmas, we all got together and I had 2 like step cousins that came over. And they had like Grogu shirts on. I was like, oh, have you guys seen, you know, Star Wars, you know, like Luke Skywalker and stuff? And they're like, what? No, they've only seen The Mandalorian, you know? So certainly that is the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, and I won't keep going along, but like, that's great. And to me, that's what is great about Mandalorian is like, you know, it's a new character and it's a Mandalorian like Boba Fett. So it's almost like, it almost feels like we did a Boba Fett type thing already. And like, I wish this was another new character versus like something else, because that's like Mandalorian. It's something like things we've seen, but it's new, and it's new characters to get to know with their own stories and backstories and like new planets and like all this stuff. And to rehash or go back to a character and a planet and locations is like, it just wasn't quite as exciting at times.
Fair enough.
Well, that went on a lot longer than I expected, but should have expected it. Yeah.
Did it? Yeah. Well, then, you expected wrong because it's kind of what I figured.
You don't turn me on this conversation and then just turn me off right away.
I really enjoy talking about Star Wars with you, though. Even if we may not always agree on stuff, I always enjoy it.
That's why I'm watching Clone Wars, so we can talk about it off air.
Yeah,
mostly.
Yeah, and it will give you, I think, a better expectation of how Star Wars TV might proceed going forward.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Although Clone Wars is... Yeah, okay. Well, we didn't get anything else. All right.
No, you said it. What are you going to say? What's Clone Wars, Chris?
Well, Clone Wars, like we talk about it, Boba Fett was called, Boba Fett, Clone Wars can go and cover other things for two or three episodes, and that's expected because it's called Clone Wars, as opposed,
Clone Wars.
And it's all about expectations and like how you set those. And
I almost wonder if like in 2 or 3 years they're going to come up with like an umbrella term for all these series.
I wouldn't be surprised, especially like the Mandalorian stuff. The Ahsoka, the Mandalorian, Jabba the Hutt, or not Jabba the Hutt, Boba the Fett.
Boba the Fett.
Like all that should be under an umbrella if we're going to like have 2 episodes with Ahsoka as opposed to, like in the middle of Mandalorian.
Right.
Or
I heard Jon Favreau. Yeah, like Jon Favreau a couple years ago when Mando Season 2 was coming out, he did say he wanted it to be like Game of Thrones where you could leave one story for a little bit and follow a different story. But then instead of wrapping it all into the Mandalorian series, I think marketing or Disney or whomever was like, yeah, but let's call it the Boba Fett show.
Yeah.
And as long as it's mostly about him, you can
they're going to make
a
movie about it too. So I'm sure that the marketing team was like, we got to call it Boba Fett.
Well, and I think a lot of these problems that we are having, just to wrap it up, come from the idea of they were banking on Boba Fett being a very old school marketable character.
Yeah.
Right? They were banking on the Sarlacc pit. They're banking on the helmet, the armor, the Slave One ship. They're banking on all these things that like kids of a certain generation have thought about for a long time and grown into adults thinking about. So I think they were thinking there's so much fan service here that they're not even going to be able to pick their jobs off the floor. And I think they were thinking that Boba Fett had been a bit like I think they were expecting that to carry the show a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Okay.
I'm excited about season 3. And Kenobi comes out in May, right?
Yeah, May 25th.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting. So what's the next thing on Disney Plus? Is it Moon Knight?
Yeah, I think so. Moon Knight, or there might be some like behind the scenes Boba Fett thing hitting tonight. You know how they do.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Okay.
Bad Batch is coming around sometime soon. I hear they're going to divide the season 2 up over 2 different parts. Like 8 here.
I
and
wonder how
8
many
later.
seasons of that they'll have, because there's a lot of stuff in Bad Batch that kind of ties into like Boba Fett. So
Indeed.
who knows? All right, we got to move off this.
Yeah, let's get out of here.
Yeah. Been in Star Wars for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Nightmare Alley.
Let's go.
Step right up and behold one of the unexplained mysteries of the universe. Is he man or beast? This creature has been examined by the foremost scientists and pronounced unequivocally a man. I am prepared to offer you folks one last chance to witness this supreme oddity. Where did it come from? Begotten by the same lust and threat that got us all walking on this earth, but gone wrong somehow in maternal womb. Not fit for living. Is it a beast? Or is it a man? You're in luck, because tonight you will see him feed. Come on in and find out. Is he man or beast?
All right, so as always with our newer films, we will be doing a spoiler-free section up front. We'll be talking generally about our thoughts on the film, not giving away any major plot details or spoilers, at least not any more than what's in the IMDb synopsis. So if you have not seen Nightmare Alley yet, you can go ahead and listen. We'll give you a warning, a bumper before we get into spoilers, so you can pause the podcast, go watch Nightmare Alley, and come back and finish listening to the episode.
That's right. Nightmare Alley was directed by Guillermo del Toro. It stars Bradley Cooper, Rooney Mara, Kate Blanchett, and Toni Collette. The IMDb synopsis says, an ambitious carny with a talent for manipulating people with a few well-chosen words hooks up with a female psychiatrist who is even more dangerous than he is. TMI.
Yeah, spoilers.
Way TMI.
TMI. In my opinion, the synopsis of the movie should not go into the second half of the movie.
Yeah. Or the first half of the movie should be shorter.
There you go.
One of the two.
Yeah, one of the two. Bad synopsis is what I'm saying. Okay, so guys, who wants to kick us off? I think I'm going to choose Chris because I believe, Chris, you were the first one to see this, and I think you've also seen both versions.
Yeah.
So yeah, kick us off. First of all, what is your relationship with Guillermo del Toro? And then, what'd you think of the movie?
I like Guillermo del Toro. Pan's Labyrinth. Probably one of my favorite movie-going experiences. I don't know exactly what I was expecting when I went in, but I was dazzled and wondered. And
it is very good.
Yeah. I like him a lot. I haven't seen... Well, I did see Blade 2, but I haven't seen... What is the other one that he did in that... Anyways, not important. I like...
Hellboy?
No, I've seen those. There was another one that was around the Blade 2 time period.
Mimic,
maybe. Anyways, not important. I like Guillermo del Toro, and I'm always excited to see what he does next. Oftentimes there is it's kind of like a Quentin Tarantino thing where he's got 20 movies that he might do, and you're never quite sure if any of them will get made, which, good news, the Pinocchio movie, there's a trailer for it on Netflix, comes out at the end of the year, so I am excited about that. But I watched I actually watched Nightmare Alley in black and white. It was re-released, in the end of January or so. Released back into the theaters in black and white, and I was I had missed it during its first run. And I was like, "Oh, awesome! This is my chance to watch it." And I would have rather watched it in color the first time, because I feel like watch it in its original form and then proceed to the next one. But what I will say is, I did like the black and white quite a bit. It looked really good. I have since watched a second time in color in preparation for this, and the color also looks really great. So I don't know that black and white...
You can't go wrong is what you're saying, visually.
Either one's fine, yeah. Anyways, I really like this movie a lot. I think Bradley Cooper is really good, really is pretty good in it, and it's such a star-studded cast with William Dafoe, and it's dark and it's grisly, and it's kind of what you'd expect from Guillermo del Toro. Going in, I kind of knew what to expect since I had seen the original one before, but the original one, because it was 1957 or 47, I forget which year, but it's almost like an abridged version of this. This is 2.5 hours long, and I'd be surprised if the original is 2 hours long. It's probably closer to 90 minutes. So this is just like an extended version of that original thing, and I really love the.
Well, I hear it's more like the book.
Yeah. Well, there's some things in the book, from my understanding, that were added, and some they kind of took from both places. From my understanding, I haven't read the book, but someone has told me about the book. Anyways, I love the Carney sequence. Have you guys ever seen Carnival? It was on HBO.
No, that looked really depressing. I saw Freaks, the old movie Freaks.
Yeah,
well,
I've seen that.
No, it reminded me of Carnival. Just I like that atmosphere. And even in the original movie, that was my favorite part of it. As it moves out from there, it's not quite as fun, but it's still really interesting. And Cate Blanchett is definitely, I think, adds a lot to this film. Her and Bradley Cooper facing off in those sequences are really good. Really, there's not a weak link when it comes to actors, because you got Richard Jenkins, and then you got the guy from The Expanse.
Oh, David Strathairn.
Yeah.
Strathairn?
Yeah. It's just really a great cast. Anyways, I really like this movie quite a bit. And Justin, what did you think?
Well, as far as Guillermo del Toro goes, I would say that I'm a fan. You know, I love Pan's Labyrinth. I think it's great. I really love Devil's Backbone.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably my other favorite film of his. Hellboys, those are fun. I like Shape of Water. There's been a few of his that I've missed in the 2010s, I think. But for the most part, you know, I'm a fan. This movie, I think, it disappointed me. I'm not gonna mince words about it. I didn't really feel much other than kind of like a bit of a slog. Like it felt a little overly long to me. Where the movie succeeds, I think, is where Guillermo del Toro always succeeds, which is putting together a really slick, good-looking production with great cinematography. And he has like obviously a star-studded cast here, and everybody, there's not a bad actor in the bunch, right? And everybody's doing well. What I found like left me kind of cold was everything other than that like really great spectacle of like this blockbuster thing with top-notch production design and top-notch casting. And like to me, the icing is wonderful, but the cake underneath all of that was a little bland and a little boring for me. I think it's just like, it felt a little bit predictable, a little bit like everything that went on, I saw coming a mile away. Everything felt kind of like by the numbers, like somebody would tell a story in the first part of the movie and I would hear that story and it felt like a setup for later because there was no logical reason for them to go into that story or him to divulge as much of the story as he does if it's not going to be important later. So when it comes back around, I feel the script, I feel the plotting. It feels pretty like by the numbers in that sense. And I expected more to happen, like more. I expected the film to at some point kind of go off the rails, and to me, I think that everything is so slick about it in that Guillermo del Toro style that like it almost detracted from the movie in the sense that like there was no room for error, no room for what felt like any spontaneity from like the performances. Like it felt really like put together and overly polished in a way that like kind of combats this sort of like gritty grifter noir world. So like tonally a bit like was off for me too. And I guess last thing I'll say is like what this film is about also feels a little bit like what this film is about. Like, I don't know that what the film is trying to say is much different than what's there, right? Like, I didn't walk away feeling like it made me think about anything like on a deeper level than like, you know, than like what the story is, right? Like, I was like, the story is about a grifter and, you know, what happens to him happens. And like, I don't necessarily take that out to anything greater or any deeper or any like metaphorical way, if that makes sense. So it feels very surface level for me too, which I was hoping for a little bit more. And I'll leave it there, which is all pretty negative. I'm sorry. I might be alone in that. I don't know, Mike, where are you at?
Well, I definitely am more in line with Chris than you. Now, while I was watching it, I had a lot of similar thoughts. Like, oh yeah, I know where this is going. Yep, I was right about where that was going. This is a stupid plan. I don't know why he thinks this plan will work. This is a dumb, stupid plan that would never, ever work. Yeah. And I'm talking about, you know, the third act here. But to be vague, yeah, there's a lot of things in here. Like, yes, it is predictable. Halfway through the movie, I pretty much knew where it was going to go. But that said, this is an adult noir with a budget that I won't say is through the roof, but is probably pretty generous, and the money looks like it's on the screen. And I don't know the last time anything like this ever got made with that kind of budget, with this kind of talent behind it. And there's something that is not lost on me when I'm watching it that is just appreciative that something like this exists. This dark character study that isn't reinventing the wheel. We've seen a bunch of movies show us a drifter type con man who works his way through the world, hurting people. And there's an inevitability to the way those stories always end, that this movie does not reinvent the wheel in any way, shape, or form.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does do is present a very nice wheel. If you're looking for this kind of wheel.
Sure, it's a good-looking wheel. Yeah.
It's a good-looking wheel. It's well acted. You know, the spokes it rolls well. It's is it going to be the most impressive? No, it didn't make my top 10 of the year.
Did you see it before the top 10?
Yeah, I was one of the ones I watched to try to cram in.
Oh, okay.
But that said, I wasn't disappointed in it, I don't think. I found the darkness to be refreshing. I found the acting all around to be solid. Yeah, I think probably the thing that didn't make me love it would probably be that I was putting together the end of the movie before it happened. But that's fine. Like, there's certain characters, as soon as you meet them, you're like, femme fatale. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Sure.
That's not always a bad thing.
No, it's not always a bad thing. But if I'm understanding your point correctly, it just felt a little bit too by the numbers in that regard.
Yeah, and which overall felt kind of sterile.
Sure. Yeah. No, I understand that completely, because after it was over, I was debating 3.5 stars, 4 stars, definitely not an enthusiastic 4. So I think I ultimately landed on 4 stars, but I think that just comes from the joy of this genre being made in like 2021, with a cast this good, acted this well, made this well. Have I seen better noirs that I'd rather watch that were made in like the 30s or 40s? Yeah, absolutely. But I did enjoy my time here in this world, this darkness, this adult fable. It worked for me, even though I completely see your point. Like, there aren't any surprises here if you have seen more than like 3 or 4 noirs.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing I'll say, just like, I don't think you're necessarily alone, Justin. I mean, maybe on this podcast you are. But in general, I don't know that it was necessarily received with open arms. So I think it's pretty split in general, like the reception of this. That's based on no evidence that I have in front of me right now, just from my reading of when it came out, like listening to this stuff. But I'm really interested to dive into spoilers just to kind of talk about some things. But I will say, having already seen, the first film, like there wasn't a lot of surprises I was expecting, but I enjoyed the journey. Like,
so
let's move into spoilers.
Oh, sorry. Well, hang on real quick before we move into spoilers.
Okay.
I looked it up on Rotten Tomatoes. It's sitting at a 79% with critics and a 68% with audiences.
Okay.
So,
yeah,
there you go.
Positive.
Yeah,
mostly
it is
positive.
fresh. Yeah,
By both.
Indeed.
Do you guys want to move into spoilers? Because there's some stuff I want to talk about. I think.
Real quick, just say I like Bradley Cooper in this.
Yeah, Bradley
I
Cooper.
think he's really good in this.
all the acting. I don't know that there's a weak link, really. Maybe Rooney Mara, but I think she's fine.
Yeah, the fact that you had to question that.
Yeah,
She's
like
clearly
as
not
I
that
was
weak of a
saying.
link.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a weak link. I did not connect with this movie so much that like I don't have like a strong link in my mind either. Like I'm like, I just didn't feel anything that like bowled me over from anybody, but certainly not a weak link. Like so much of this film feels like per Guillermo del Toro's like work. Like it's all very well done.
Sure.
And that goes for the performances, but nothing stood out.
William Dafoe,
For me.
I think he stands out.
He's doing Willem Dafoe things.
Sure. Things he already stands out for, but, standing out. Anyways.
Maybe.
Let's go to spoilers if you guys are ready.
Yep, let's go.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
Give me one cigarette you got up there. I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
All right. Okay, so now that we are in spoilers and we're free to talk about everything, I guess what I wanted to say, that you felt like everything was somewhat predictable. And, it's hard to, like, William Dafoe sits down with him and he's like, this is how you geek somebody. And that's like, that he's going to be geeked by the end of the movie, because he's done step by step. But for me, it's like Icarus. Like, we know that Icarus is going to fly too close to the sun, but it's, like...
It's
and
the
then
journey.
He's gonna, it's the journey. And we know that it's going to happen, and we know that he's going to come crashing down and burn. But it's part of, like, it's the atmosphere of that we're in as we're watching it that I really liked. And the performances, there's not necessarily any surprises per se, but... I just loved the mood and the atmosphere. And then even, I guess the surprising thing would be like how grisly it got towards the end,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Is that surprising for Del Toro, though?
No, but...
Isn't that his thing?
It's not really his thing in American. This is his most gnarly American film, I think. Like, I haven't seen this sort of violence. Like, not that the violence is as bad as Pan's Labyrinth.
I was just surprised by it. It wasn't like...
Yeah, like I wasn't expecting it to go as far in some places as it did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I completely understand your point of view too. It's just like, I guess for me, it was just the mood and the atmosphere, and like I also got a real big kick out of the end, because in the old movie, like, he becomes a geek, and then the Rooney Mara character shows up, and she's like, you know what? Everything's okay. We can let's get back together. And
It had
so
like a happy ending.
Real Cincinnati Kid ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so with this, like, I love the ending of Bradley Cooper just, like, sir, I was born for this, or whatever it is that he says at the end for geeking.
Yeah. In fact,
and
when
then
that
just
scene
laughing.
started, when he's talking to Tim Blake Nelson, and you're like, oh, this is where he gets geeked.
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking probably like a lot of what Justin ended the scene with, which is like, oh man, I wish I didn't see this coming so well, or like, I wish it didn't fit so nicely in like a little bow, or it was so like uninteresting that we got here. But it was Bradley Cooper's performance that the way he handled that scene, it did give me a different way of looking at it than how I went into the scene, like where he laughs for a very long time. And then he's like, I was born for this. And it's like, that attitude was not what I was expecting at the end. Like, where is his character at emotionally is the only thing that I think I would say the end left me like, whoa, okay. Is because, everything that happened, I was like, I could have guessed. I could have guessed.
It's telegraphed pretty big.
Yeah, it's the script is just too telegraphed to not guess some of it, at the very least.
They're not trying to surprise you, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I agree. But it was the performance, the character study of how we get there. It's like, in There Will Be Blood, spoilers, you could probably assume that Daniel Plainview will be a miserable old man by himself. but to see the journey and to see that performance get there, and it's handled in a way where you're like, okay, well, like I knew the destination, but I didn't know how our character would inhabit that journey.
Sure.
And where they would be emotionally at the end of it. So yeah, I think if, like, my defense of this film probably falls a lot on the performances and the direction, not necessarily the script or original story.
Yeah, and what I would say, though, is, like, William Dafoe has to give that speech about geeking, not just for the end sequence, because I think, Bradley Cooper's character is thinking that he's doing the geeking, and oftentimes, like, especially with Cate Blanchett, she is geeking him, like, so I think there's a little bit more in that little section, which isn't necessarily my favorite part of the film, but, like, there's a little bit more in that section of the film than I think, like,
there is that whole, go on.
Well, I think it applies to his relationship with Rooney Mara more than anything else. Like, to me, the whole point, because otherwise I struggled to even understand why this scene happened, because whatever, but, like, Toni Collette and him in the bathtub and them, like, hooking up, the first time he takes a bath there, or at least I'm assuming that they hooked up, because we did the, like, they kiss and fade to black, like, old Hollywood code for they just had sex.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Her saying, you're a trouble, like, you've got whatever she says, right? Like, you've got something to you. And, like, I think that's his opium to his drops of opium to Rooney Mara's character for a while, is his charm and his good looks.
Sure.
So,
like,
I kind of took that as, like, that was another significance to that story.
Yeah. What I will say is I actually like that section of the movie. The Toni Collette's great, but I like how they did it better in the original one, because she just, like, meets him and she starts giving him a hand job, which almost makes me think, like, was that what he's paying the 10 cents for? Is that, like, code for, like, a hand job? Like, you get a bath, because as soon as he goes in, David Strathairn's like, I'm going to leave. So it almost made me think, like, is she selling hand jobs? What's happening here? Like,
well, I think she has a house next to a carnival, so I think she just kind of keeps an open door, loose policy, because, like, they even acknowledge, like, Rooney Mara is even like, isn't so-and-so going to be upset? And she's like, oh, everyone knows the one I'm interested in is you.
Yeah, she's lived, is
like,
what he
like,
says.
everyone knows that it's not like a secret that Toni Collette and him were banging.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think, like, who's geeking who as you go throughout the movie is also...
There's definitely that, because the whole movie, whenever he's left up to his own devices and he's not being seduced, he doesn't drink. Like, he makes it a point not to drink ever.
Sure.
Yeah, and it wasn't until Cate Blanchett, and as soon as he starts drinking, he makes worse and worse decisions.
Yeah. And for me, those moments, like the moment of him starting to drink, I personally did not understand, like, how he comes to that as a character. Like, if he's so steadfast because he's got to keep his mind about him, like, his decision to take a drink made no sense to me. And that's where this idea of, like, yes, we know where it's going, but the journey there is what makes it interesting.
Well,
and
I think that's what makes her so dangerous.
I just don't...
She's manipulating him.
Add up to me.
Fair enough.
I didn't understand how, though.
Yeah.
And same with, sorry, but real quick, same with the last scene, like, his knowledge of how geeking works and how getting him into it, and, like, that last scene just made no sense to me from his character standpoint. Like, yes, he fell on hard times and was a bum, but like it's almost like he had to do those things because that's what makes the story most, like, complete. Is the only reason that he does either of those things to me, is because that's what needs to happen in order for the arc.
Okay,
and
so
it didn't feel organic.
Sure. Go on, Chris. What are you going to say?
I think I can see the drinking thing more than I can see that last scene. Like, that last scene, I think he almost wants that for himself. Like
that's his atonement.
Yeah, like he hates himself so much, and like he's ruined
also,
everything.
He's not safe. Like he can't go back and get another job. Like Richard Jenkins will never. I guess he's dead, but like I feel like with Cate Blanchett and like the way he left town and like the cops after him and stuff like that, this is the way he can live life and continue living with no one ever finding him.
Yeah, and I just think he feels so shitty about everything else that's happened, whether it's with Rooney Mara or like the people he's killed or all that stuff. I don't think he cares anymore. He wants that for himself, so.
But why does he try to sell him the Mentalist Act?
Well, that's what he can do first.
Yeah. But why?
Well, he realizes once it begins to be pitched to him, he's like,
once he realizes he's being pitched to be a geek, he's like, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, this just doesn't make any sense character-wise to why he would submit to that. And that's where I struggle. So, meh.
And again, that's the performance for me, right? Like I think the performance sells that based on everything that he's been through and that he just did. Because the whole movie, it's like the last half of the movie is just basically like every character being like, it seems like you're downward spiraling. And he's like, nah, I got this.
Yeah. He like flies so close to the sun so many times. You're like, just stop, man. Just stop. But every time he flies close to the sun, he's like, I can fly closer. And,
And then each time he's losing a little bit of himself too. Like the man he is at the end of the movie isn't the dude he is at the beginning, right? Like he has gone on a journey where he did fly too close to the sun. He did abuse people. He did use all his charms for bad. And as a result,
he believed his own shit too.
Yeah,
Sorry.
he started believing it. Like just like he was warned.
Yeah, the shut eye.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think I look at it as this is his own personal. I don't want to say redemption.
No.
But this is his own personal. Like I made this bed. Of course, it would end here. I guess I'll lie in it,
Yeah, it's his alternative to suicide, or like drinking himself to death on the train.
Yeah, just being one of those bums freezing to death.
Yeah. I will say, I know someone that read the book, and she was telling me about the book, and that while that last plan is fairly dumb, I think I can kind of see what he was trying to do. Like, just stay off in the distance, and he'll be over here, and he'll just get on his knees. He just doesn't plan it very well. Yeah, he doesn't plan it very well. But in the book, apparently, he convinces her to have sex with him, and so, I think his plan was a lot better than that.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and then in the middle of sex is when he was like, I can't let you go, and everything goes crazy in the book. So this is definitely a better version of that.
This is improved.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyone else got anything?
No, I mean, there's some interesting things. Like I always enjoy the grifter con man learning his craft, and I think while this movie feels too long to me, I also I would have liked more of like him becoming that person. You know what I mean? Like I felt like we make some big jumps in this movie, and from like him being a person who needs to do whatever, like physical labor, to, suddenly being very good at all of this stuff, like I missed some of that in between section. I like the process, more than just seeing him pull a lot of this stuff off. So like those sections with like him and Pete or David Strathern, I thought were really good. Like to me, the first half of this movie I enjoyed much more than the second.
The first hour is really great.
Yeah,
and I'm with you on that.
With that. Yeah,
I think I just enjoyed the second half a little bit more. You know what we should do?
What?
Why don't we do Nightmare Alley next week, but the Criterion one? We can just. I don't know that there's any. Are there any movies coming out that we really want to see? But it'd be really fun to talk about the original one next week with you guys. What do you guys think?
Sure, I'll do it. Justin may be more reluctant.
I mean, I have a little bit more faith in a noir being made in the time of like noir's heyday than a current recreation of a noir that is overly produced. or that leans so heavily on how much money it has to overproduce everything.
Yeah, it didn't have a ton of money. I looked at it was like $60 million. So, I mean, that's a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money compared to big Hollywood budgets.
Sure. It's no Marvel movie, but or like Christopher Nolan movie, but
Yet it looks better than any Marvel movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. A little too good sometimes.
Well, anyways, we can talk about it later, but if we wanted to, the Nightmare Alley.
Okay.
But it'd be fun to do it so close back to back, and we could talk about them all together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we might as well. Like, if there's a time to just knock out Nightmare Alley Criterion, since we are, it's not like a stated goal anymore, I guess, but like watching the entire Criterion collection is like eventually a thing that will probably
hopefully
never happen just because the numbers don't work out in terms of how many new films there are. Yeah. But in theory, we want to get through all of them.
Might as well watch that one.
Yeah, it's the time to do it. So sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
And with that, are we done?
Yeah, I am.
I'm done for sure.
All right. Sounds like 2 recommends and a don't recommend.
Yeah. I mean, it's mostly like a meh. It's okay.
Yeah.
But that's not that good. Okay. That's it, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, listener, for listening. Thanks as always to Jake Wagner-Russell for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bobscotch.
All right. Stay tuned to this channel. Our next episode will apparently be a Criterion Collection episode on Nightmare Alley.
That's really exciting, guys. Thanks for
diversity.
Yeah, thanks for helping out and going along with my last minute change. It's only an hour and 51 minutes, so it's not much under 2 hours, but it is, a good 40 minutes shorter than the remake.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they can bridge that emotional journey for Justin.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, and I think one of his main complaints is that it's overly long. Anyways, we'll talk about it next week. Thanks so much for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.